Regular session from executive session.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Rice?
Yes. Would you join us in honoring our country by the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So move?
Second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Rice?
Yes. The first item on our agenda this evening is a public hearing. It involves case Anderson 2-2012 LUP Ohio Riverfront Plan. And Paul Drury is here to introduce that to us.
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight we have for your consideration the adoption of the update of the Ohio River Area Front Plan update. And as you know, earlier this year, in January, the township hired R.W. Armstrong as a planning consultant to help guide us through this planning process. So at this point in time, I would like to introduce Cynthia Bowen and Keller Brooker-Scacco, who are here from R.W. Armstrong to give a brief presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
I just want to take a few minutes and kind of give you an overview of what we have done with this plan with our steering committee of, I think, 35 people? It fluctuates somewhere between that range and that number from meeting to meeting, but quite a bit of extensive involvement from businesses, residents, and other interested citizens within this area. And so let me quickly explain the study area from the map, the presentation behind you, and I'm pretty sure you have copies in your packet. The study area goes from Sutton Road all the way over to the township boundary on the east side to 275 on the north side down to the river. So that was the large area that we were dealing with in the study area. First thing we wanted to do was take a look at the existing land use. As you know, you have the huge entertainment district with River Downs and River Bend and Coney Island that have all been established there. But the rest of the district, you still have a little industrial around 4 Mile Road, and then the majority of it is residential. And so we wanted to take a look at and see how we needed to maybe update this plan. One of the things that we did need to look at was development suitability. What parcels could be developed given a lot of various constraints within the area? And so we looked at topography, floodplain, and transportation access, and a few other variables, and began to map that out. And so what this map represents is the areas that you see in green are those areas that are really suitable for development. They don't have a lot of constraints. Those areas that you see in red, kind of like a stoplight, meaning there are going to be some things there that may limit the development potential of that. So we were able to use this map to help guide us to update the land use map. So the planning process that we take, as Paul said, we started this back in January with a kickoff and a site tour of the entire area and meeting with various residents and people to talk about some of the issues going on. We ended up having 5 different steering committee meetings and 2 public meetings to talk about issues and talk about concepts with the public. And then as you see, as we moved through the fall, we had several iterations of the draft for discussion, and as we have now moved into the adoption process, October, November, and here in December. Our process and visioning process really looks at, after we understand all the existing conditions that happen that from a demographic, a market standpoint, and a physical standpoint, we really work with the public and the steering committee to understand the direction of where we need to go and what the vision for this area needs to be. We then craft the vision, the goals, the objectives, and we vet that out in a public meeting. We vet that with the steering committee and really discuss that and spend time. I think we ended up spending 2 steering committee meetings just discussing those. We then craft the development plan map to support those and then test that map back against those vision, goals, and objectives to see if we need to make any revisions Then we move on to prioritizing those. So the various departments within the township will know what improvements should be made for this area. We draft the plan. We've gotten public input and steering committee input, and now we're going through the final plan process. So quickly to get over some of the goals and the objectives, there were 7 goals in this plan. The first goal talks about preservation of the natural areas and environmentally sensitive lands, protecting those view sheds that you can really see from the hilltops. And so the objectives underneath show where we're going to work with the Hamilton County Soil and Water Conservation District to make sure we have the correct hillside regulations in for the area and that they match the vision of this plan to increase public access to the river with additional boat ramps and transient docks. Goal 2 focuses on making sure that the existing regulations and economic development tools that you have and that you can use as a township are updated to support this vision of the plan. And so we might look at things like modifying the existing riverfront district to allow for mixed use or increased residential density to provide for kind of the demographics of the area. And to look at other ways to make sure that we're buffering residential and recreation development from some of the industrial uses that have already been in existence within this area. Goal 3 focuses on making this area really a year-round area, that we don't want it to really be just a spring to a fall type of area. We want people to be here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so one of the ways we look at that is, again, going back to this concept of bringing more residential down into this entertainment area. So you've got a mix of residential, retail, office, as well as the entertainment. So it really begins to support this area. And then with that, we need to make sure, as development occurs and changes, that we have enough parking in the area to support all of these events, and we're limiting traffic and congestion. Goal 4 focuses on making sure that we're attracting and retaining uses that increase the tax base, but still being compatible and true to the existing uses and the character that is there. So some of the things that we're looking at is developing a gateway along US 52 so visitors know when they're in the area. Also looking at making sure that industrial uses are kind of guarding against kind of pollution into the river and keeping all of their operations within sites, but still allowing them the capability to expand their operations, because we understand that's a part of the tax base and the river is there for them to use for their operations. Goal 5 focuses on making sure we have infrastructure, both from a multimodal transportation system, but also from a water sewer infrastructure system. And so things like, we know that 52 and Kellogg Road really flood sometimes throughout the year. So working with the Hamilton County Engineer's Office to really look at and create a preliminary engineering report to see how can we redesign this road so we can maintain access all through the seasons, even when there's heavy rain. Making sure we're working with utility providers to make sure that there are sewer connections open to and available for residential development and some of this increase in the density and intensity of residential. And then also supporting the extension of bicycle facilities from your wonderful trail that you've already developed, but continuing that along Kellogg Road and 52 to connect with Claremont County. Goal 6 gets to this idea of providing diverse housing options that are still, again, consistent and compatible with what has been there. Going back to this idea of making sure and offering mixed-use type developments where you might have retail or office on the first floor and residential up on other floors, and integrating that into a development setting. We talk about then also where potential areas for residential development could be and how that might happen, and then also making sure that we're identifying areas for additional transitional residents to get a little bit more density of residential character within that area. And then finally, Goal 7 is to assure that the public services match the level of growth within the study area. And a lot of this gets back to making sure that that we're being thoughtful towards the fiscal impact modeling that has been done, and that as new developments come in, they're utilizing that tool to make sure that it fits, it's not adding a burden to the tax base, it's not adding a burden to the public services. And also looking at creating this public-private partnership with the various regional attractions that are down there to make sure that during peak times, again, we're not burdening the taxpayers of Anderson Township, and so that there's a partnership there. So again, what we did was, with these goals, we made sure we went back and updated the future land use district, so ensuring that we really called out the entertainment district from Sutton to kind of 4 Mile Road. You see from there, still south of Kellogg, we added in, and I guess, Paul, you gave me a pointer, didn't you? And did I use it? No. I'll just continue to talk, they can follow along. The purple areas on the map would be the industrial areas. So again, we're looking at containing that still within the area to continue to add to the tax base, but allowing some expansion. The kind of dark yellow areas that you see here and over here are really those areas where we're looking at transitional residence, areas where you're going to have a little bit higher density residential, and also those opportunities for mixed-use development. And then we've added in some scenic river commercial right here on the north side of Kellogg, again, to support what's going on here in the industrial area, but also to provide needed small shops and eateries for the people who might be going over to the regional destinations. And then, of course, the rest of the area would continue to be either in parks, open space, green space, or in single-family residential. So at this point in time, I think I will end our presentation and see if you have any questions for us.
Any questions from the board? Comments?
Got a question or two. There's quite potential for quite a bit of development and perhaps job creation in this area. Can you give us an estimate on maybe what the next 5 or 10 years might bring in those areas?
You would ask me that exact detailed question. We did, what I can tell you, because I do not have the number off the top of my head.
Okay.
We did complete a market study as part of this that began to look at what we could see in terms of job potential, where those jobs could filter out, and how much jobs that we could have to the area. I just do not have that number off the top of my head, but it is included as part of the document report.
Okay, and there's some estimate of perhaps what development, the number of dollars of development in that area also, or?
We did, because what we did is we worked with Paul, and then we took this land use plan that we created and put it into the fiscal impact model so we could understand what the impacts would be based upon the land use plan that we've created.
Okay, and that's all part of the
Yes.
final document?
Yes, we
Okay.
included that in the final document.
Thank you.
I apologize that I don't have the exact number off the top of my head.
Okay.
Paul?
I just had one thing to add. First of all, thanks to R.W. Armstrong for Cynthia and Kelly. Shane Burkhart was also a planner that was very instrumental in developing the plan. I also want to thank our steering team, which we do have members of the steering team in the audience, so I do want to thank everyone for their participation in the process. The Zoning Commission held a public hearing on October the 22nd and did recommend approval with amendments. And in your packet, the amendments are labeled as schedules, and they are redlined, and the idea is that those particular pages and additions or corrections would replace the adoption draft pages, and the adoption draft, which has been posted on our website, is dated October the 10th. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions before we open it up for public comment if you have them.
I'll wait till the end.
Okay. Not at this time. It is a public hearing. By the way, I wish to also thank the members of the steering committee and all those who participated in this plan. It's an amazing process, and it takes time, but it's worthwhile, so thank you. But at this time, I would ask anyone interested in making comments, whether they are proponents, opponents, or just have any questions or comments, they're welcome to step forward at this time in the hearing and address the board. Ron?
Either one.
Members of the board, good evening. My name is Ron Edgerton, for the record. For those of you who don't know me, don't know how that happened. I've been a resident of the township for 34 years. I was appointed to this study committee to represent the Green Space program, having been remaining chairman of the committee now for going on 18 years, so it's been very near and dear to me. I'm also a professional community planner, as many of you know, so I have an added interest in being able to observe and participate in a process that I have managed myself for many, many years. So one could suggest that maybe I wore 3 hats: as a resident, as the chairman of the Green Space Committee, and as a professional planner, but I was still only granted 1 vote. But I do have the proxy of 30 other members of the committee, so that means I ought to have at least 30 or 40 minutes I can talk to you about this plan, right?
Go ahead.
Let me first say that being in this business myself for so many years, I've seen a lot of presentations, done a lot of approaches to community planning, and this was a process that was very well done. The consulting team came in, they were invested in getting interaction with our team, our committee. They brought us into smaller groups so we could have interaction within the groups, and then we brought that together for a broader discussion. They were receptive to our feedback and our comments. The staff, led by Paul Drury, was very effective at helping to move the process along. So I was very impressed with how the process developed. I was also impressed with the content of this document in terms of its user-friendly style. It has a lot of graphics in it. It has a lot of photographs. It has charts and tables, allows you to see the information in a fairly succinct way. You could easily make this a 200-page document, and then you'd get lost in it. But no, they put the essence of the material in the first part of the document. They contain the market and feasibility study and the back part of the document, and it too is pretty comprehensive for the study area. So I thought the effort in the planning process was very well done, and you all ought to be complimented for your selection of this consulting team for this work. As far as the study area and the recommendations of this report, as introduced, I think, by Paul, this is really an outgrowth of the comprehensive plan that was updated several years ago, which I was also a part of. And the reason why we determined in that study that we needed to do this one is because the level of detail you can do in a comprehensive plan is often not nearly enough to allow you the kind of guidance you need to make informed decisions. So there are several areas of the township that required a more detailed investigation. That's why this report was created. It, like the comprehensive plan, are married together. Each informs the other. And the decisions made by the board and other decision makers needs to remind themselves that these documents are guides for informed decision making. They are not a rule that says you do it this way but no other way. Over time, conditions will change, and there's certain things that will happen in the study area that would transform some of the initiatives here in a significant way. So it's important to take heed of what is being recommended because it's a well-developed plan, but it also needs to be flexible to accommodate changing conditions. The very detailed market study that was done really is focused principally on about a 10% area within the study altogether. It's the southwest area where we've got river downs and other entertainment-type commercial uses where you got the potential to grow that area in a more significant way. Residential uses will evolve in the hillside areas, but it's going to be restricted by the hillside conditions. What will make or break the future of that southwest area will be the transformation of river downs. If it becomes a racino, it will have a significant impact on stimulating development in that area. If it doesn't, then the area will be harder to market. Also, without doing infrastructure improvements for access and utilities and other things that makes development possible, it'll also be a constraint to its potential for development in that area. So I would urge the township to be proactive about encouraging the things that will transform that area in a creative way, but I believe that the racino feasibility and potential will have a significant impact on that particular area. The other important aspect of this study area, which this plan does recognize, is it is a very significant environmentally sensitive area. And now I'm wearing my green space hat. We have significant steep hillsides that have erosion potential. We have constraints along the Ohio River that floods in a very seasonal way. We've got to recognize and protect and honor that natural resource area because that is a lot about what Anderson Township is all about. So we got to be careful as we promote development on those hillsides and promote uses along the Ohio River. They're done in a way that can not only overcome the impediments from hillside slippage and erosion, but also from seasonal flooding, because that can be a very expensive proposition to have to repair the damage that's been done. And look what's been happening in the last few years on our national coasts and what happens with severe weather conditions. So it's very important to recognize the important sensitivity of the natural resource areas, encourage development in areas that will strengthen the quality of life in that area, but not start to become at war with the character of its natural resource. It's all important that we strike a balance there. So overall, I would say that we've done a very good job in bringing this plan along. Use it as a guide as you continue your decision-making. Recognize things will change in the future that we also need to be mindful of and revisit the plan from time to time. One important aspect of this plan is a timeline. You will see that we've made efforts to say things that we need to advocate for within the first 3 years, or the second 3 years, or the third 3 years. And this is important that you particularly focus on the first 3-year items. That means that we need to start looking at what can we do to bring those particular goals and those successes along the trail. Because we'll have a guideline that sets a motivation to move forward. It doesn't just sit on a shelf and doesn't do anything. And once you begin to accomplish things in those first 3 years, that'll inform the next phase of improvements that may be necessary. You also need to recognize that due to economic constraints or resources or priorities, you may have to be flexible in terms of adherence to those timelines. We set forth these timelines as a way to say, here are the things we think are most important. Let's really focus on those, because it's a lot to do in that area. But don't ignore the other ones and start pre-planning down the road. So, but if some things don't move as fast because of resource limitations or land availability problems, then they shouldn't just be ignored, but you may need to revise the timeline to take a little longer to get there, but the hope is that we would eventually get there. So those are some ideas and some thoughts that come to mind as you move forward with the adoption of this plan. Again, my compliments to the staff and the consulting team for doing a very good job. I enjoyed my participation. I was vocal, as you would expect, and they seemed to listen to most of what I had to say. And I was careful to review revised drafts against my comments, and I talked to Paul a few times, and I know that not all of them were taken to heart, but that's the nature of the process. But I enjoyed the process, and I was glad I could contribute to it. So that's kind of where my thoughts are at. I don't know how many others in the committee are here to comment, but any questions from any of you regarding anything I've said?
No, it's well said, and thank you for your participation and interest.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
Does anyone else wish to address the board? Yes, please come forward. Please state your name and address.
I'm Buck Niehoff. I live at One Hill Hollow Lane in Hyde Park. However, my wife and her family have owned the large parcel of land between Coldstream Country Club and 8 Mile Road for over 100 years, for 4 generations now. And I had the privilege and the great honor of serving as a member of the steering committee. And I, too, want to echo the comment that the process was very well done, very professional. I think it was an outstanding job on the part of the staff at the township and the professional advisors. It was a very enjoyable process. We feel we have our advisors for our ownership have reviewed the plan. They include Menelaus Triantafilou and some other professors at the University of Cincinnati are currently advising us about the property. And we feel that it represents a very responsible vision for the future of this whole riverfront area in Anderson Township. And we support it completely. And again, we're very happy with the process. And I personally want to thank you for allowing me to have been part of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Buck, and thank
Thank you.
you for your participation in the committee. Thanks very much. Would anyone else wish to address the board at this time on this matter? Before I close the public hearing, are there any more comments from trustees?
Yes, I would like to say, Ron said everything
I know.
said, of course.
He's so good at it.
Buck's being here is really indicative of the success of this particular committee, and I've served on a whole lot of them, including the previous Riverfront Committee. What was really fascinating is that we had, in maybe a large group with 30-some people, but we had every entity represented, and they took an active part in it, and there wasn't any conflict where you had people who had differences of opinion. There was a one mind of being, doing something with this area, and the opportunity at this moment in time with what River Downs is doing, or is planning to do, was a great catalyst to make it all happen. So it was really refreshing to be able to go through and have people really wanting to be a part of it rather than wanting to resist it. And I think it made your job a whole lot easier. Anyway, I appreciate the effort, and I think we really have a great plan here, and the next step is the most important step, and that is the beginning of the implementation.
Right.
So, thank
Great.
you.
Good work. Thank you. Any further comments?
Quickly, ma'am, I'm excited about the potential and the future for this portion of the township. I'm looking forward to seeing some of these ideas come to fruition. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. This time I'll close the public hearing. And we have a resolution before us.
I would move that we adopt case Anderson 2-2012 LUP and initiate the application to Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission.
Second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Rice?
Yes. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Buck. Was he escorting them to? Is he the security guard?
I don't think they need protection,
I
do you?
didn't think so. Yeah. Ron can handle it.
No, it doesn't seem that we have presentations and/or recognitions tonight. That's too bad, because that's always a really fun part of our agenda. And as far as a legislative update, Vicki, did you hear from Representative Stelberg?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Okay, well, I'm sure he'll get to us next time. This is a part of the program where we have a public forum, so anyone who wishes to address us on any matter may do so at this time and keep their points non-repetitive and 5 minutes or less. Seeing no one move forward for that, I'll move forward to the trustee comments, if any one of the three of us has some.
Not at this time, ma'am.
Okay? Mr. Jackson?
I do have one. For those of you who don't know, or didn't know, last week before last, there was an election. Some 26, almost 27,000 people voted in Anderson Township. Big time numbers. There were also a lot of signs out there.
Oh, yes.
And in fact, our inimitable sign inspector and his assistant, that's Jim Lewis and Andrew Benoit, removed, I think, almost 50% more than they had ever removed in an election cycle ever before, and I want to commend them for their efforts, because there were some folks out there that were just putting them up within 20 seconds of when they took the other ones down. What people don't understand, of course, is that it is not illegal to put up a political sign. It is within the zoning code, but it is not a crime, I should say. And the only person who could bring charges would be the property owner against a person that they'd never see because they come in the middle of the night. So it's unfortunate that folks do these things by planning them in the right-of-way in the middle of the night, but we did one yeoman job. What I'm leading up to is the fact that it's a cheap ploy to a plug, but anyone who still has the signs in their garage, in the back of the house, if you bring them up to the recycling center and put all the plastic signs in the Abitibi bins, and if you take the metal structures and put them over in the bin behind the salt dome, that the monies that we raise will go to help Hillcrest Cemetery efforts.
Oh,
So
that's wonderful.
if we could
How do
get
you-
some benefit out of this thing,
Oh, really? How are you going to separate that out? Or you're just going to have a separate
we'll
bin?
we'll just take all the money.
Okay,
It's pretty simple.
okay. Well, that's great. And I know that's been a
And
project of
people
yours.
can get rid of them, and why...
Yeah, that's a
Why
good
put
way.
them in if you put them in the trash, yes, Rumpke will take them, and they'll go in a pile somewhere and be there for 20,000 years to disintegrate, or take them up to the Abitibi bins at the center behind the firehouse on Beachmont Avenue. A worthy cause here, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Perfect. Glad to hear it. Okay. We'll move forward to Fiscal Officer, Mr. Kenneth Dietz. What do you have for us this
Thank you.
evening?
Just the end of October reports. We are a little bit over on our revenues as projected, and we're under on our expenditures.
Oh, that's
as
good.
projected. So
That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's good work.
two more months,
And then we'll know the real picture, right?
it'll be the same.
Okay.
No appropriation changes or...
Good news.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have several sets of minutes to approve this evening. Regarding September 6, 2012, I think it's appropriate for me to make the motion that for approval of that particular set of minutes and ask for a second.
Sure, second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
I have to abstain.
Ms. Rice?
Yes. Okay. Now,
Okay, then I would move that we approve the minutes of September 20, 2012, October 4th, 2012, October 12th, 2012, October 18th, 2012, and November 1st, 2012, with minor edits.
Second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Rice?
yes. Thank you very much. All right, moving forward to Law Director. Mrs. Comey was here earlier in executive session to advise us, but she needed to not be present at this meeting. So we'll go right ahead to Planning and Zoning. Paul, anything further after this Ohio River plan?
Nothing further unless you have questions about our
No.
monthly report.
But I thought it was a good presentation.
I do.
Yeah.
I wanted to thank you all, too, for your support of planning in the township. We couldn't have done that either without your support, and it shows how important planning is, backing this plan, the Anchor plan, the comprehensive plan. So I just wanted to thank you all as well.
And the committee did a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, great, thank you. Sheriff's Department, Lieutenant Hartzler.
I forgot I had something. I was going to leave, but
Oh, no,
Paul
you
caught me and reminded me. In the early spring, as every year, the Saga Coalition has a youth summit. And this year, in response to questions regarding alcohol use by teens in Anderson, some reported the Riverbend Entertainment Center as a prime location where teens consume alcohol. Finding this information disconcerting, a review of current practices with regard to enforcement was deemed appropriate in order to confirm a problem in fact exists and to develop a planned response. Both Riverbend and Coney Island management contract for off-duty officers for each event. There's a mix of uniformed and non-uniformed officers on the grounds. Those officers detain violators and turn them over to the on-duty officers for dispensation and, if warranted, transportation to a detention facility. A review of the resource allocation indicated a need for modification. As a partner, the general manager from Riverbend, Matt Dunn, participated in developing a plan of action to curb underage drinking during concerts. Riverbend does not support underage drinking at all. In fact, they advertise on their website and warn people that they will be ejected if they're intoxicated, and they don't allow people in the gate if they're intoxicated, but most certainly they do not condone underage drinking. Riverbend did fund an off-duty officer and provided a trailer for processing violators, which was a great help to us because we had to go down there, have someone in the back of an on-duty cruiser, process the paperwork, and then move on. Now they're paying for an officer that is trained to do that paperwork, and so as each person is brought in, the paperwork is complete. If they're going to be released, they call for a ride. If not, all the officer has to do is come and get the individual and take them to the detention facility. This alleviated the necessity for an on-duty officer to prepare paperwork with the individual in the back of his cruiser. In addition, Riverbend funded additional personnel to patrol outside of the fenced-in area, which keeps quite a bit of problem down. People climb the fence and so forth, and they throw alcohol in to their friends inside the event. They also authorized the sheriff's office to patrol the parking lots. They actually lease the property, the Coney Island property, and lease the River Downs property, so they control what goes on during the concerts. They authorized us to go onto the property, so we now go to where people tailgate, which is primarily the problem, and check for IDs if necessary, and if people are not old enough to drink, they're cited to court, or if necessary, they're detained. This, combined with the strong enforcement efforts on the roadway, it did increase the number of alcohol arrests, but it's a consensus of all involved that this sends the message to patrons and the parents of teens who attend concerts that alcohol violations will not be tolerated by Riverbend or the sheriff's office. Matt was planning on attending this evening, but something came up. He was not able to be here, but he did want me to express to the board that Riverbend is more than willing to work with the sheriff's office, and we have an excellent working relationship, and we're going to continue to tweak this plan if necessary. And Leah Beck is here from Saga, and I believe she'd like to address the board as well.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello, and thank you, Lieutenant Hartzler, for the invitation this evening. I've been with the Saga Coalition as the Executive Director for about a year now, and as you all know, our annual Youth Summit is a randomly selection of students from McNick, Turpin, and Anderson schools, and they felt very strongly about the Riverbend issue and were very specific about how teens were able to bring alcohol in. So I salute Officer Hartzler and District 5 for their efforts, and I'm glad Riverbend is addressing this issue, and look forward to sharing this with my colleagues in the tri-state who have been asking what is being done about Riverbend, because the prior summer was a hard one. There was a lot of underage drinking. So Saga looks forward to that improvement and working with the township in whatever capacity we can.
Thank you so much.
I might add as well that it's difficult at times when you're dealing with such large crowds, whether we're in there or outside or whatever goes on, to control everything that, and eliminate everything that goes on. But we believe that sending a strong message will make people think a little bit before they decide that they're going to do that. And we also are able to tell people, adults as well, if they're highly intoxicated, we take their tickets and they're not allowed to go into the event, which of course gets us into a few issues, but, you know,
I'll bet.
that's what we
Wow.
deal with, so.
That's a tough job, isn't it, really?
It is. We're trying to allow people to have fun and enjoy themselves at the same time,
Yeah.
protect everyone else, so. Anyway, that's all, and I appreciate the partnership with Saga, and Matt has done very well from Riverbend as
Yeah.
well.
Leah, I'd just like to say thank you for helping these young people draw out the answers to these problems. You know, it's easy for us, people who are over 30, 40, to think we have all the
Right.
answers, but boy, when you get it right from
I
the
know,
kids and
I know.
they tell us
So-
straight out, that's really positive.
We will be communicating that to the teens through the school to let them know that they made a difference. So I know that feels good to anyone to be heard and to make a difference, but,
And that somebody listens and does something
right,
about it.
right.
That's wonderful.
So I hope that you all can make it to this spring's summit. They really respect what you're doing and love to be heard.
Thank you
Thank you.
both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for me? That's all I have.
Will you pass along our congratulations to your, even though they graduated last night, to your latest
Oh,
Yes.
class?
your-
from
Yes.
Your
Third
class.
Citizens Academy?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it looked like a significant number of them are going to join the Citizens Patrol, so they were very interested in that. So another good group of residents. Some not residents, but they enjoyed it anyway, so.
What's our total to this point?
There's 3 classes, and honestly, I don't know what the total number of all 3 classes are.
Okay.
The first one was fairly large, but as usual, you only get about 50% of those that want to continue to participate. We've actually been fairly lucky that we've had about 60 to 65% of the graduates have stayed on to help with different projects. And they had a list of 18 different items last night that the recruiter from the Citizens Patrol came over to sign people up, and they were having a meeting, and they have 18 different projects that they participate and help out with throughout the year, not to include all the patrols that they do, but the different events throughout the township that they participate in, volunteer their time.
That's terrific. Thank you.
It might
you.
not be a bad idea, Vicki, if we send out a letter to Matt Dunn thanking him for his cooperation and his effort in solving this other problem.
I will draft something for the board's consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Public Works, Mr. Richard Shelley. Not this evening? Okay. Fire and Rescue, Chief Mark Ober.
Good evening. The only item on the agenda tonight is actually some work with the Sheriff's Department and Public Works. Is a modification, as we discussed with the board at the interim meeting. We had a question come up from the Neighborhood Association related to a parking-related issue. And just to reiterate for the audience, we put a plan in place back in 2004 and have a resolution to limit parking on certain streets, and also have a process to review anytime questions come up, and probably a couple times a year, we have a few of those. So what we did is went out and did our research once we received the information from the Neighborhood Association, and at the intersection, actually on Stirrup, going into Turpin Hills by Newtown Road, there was a question brought up about the parking there, so the Life Safety Division of the Fire Department, Public Works, and we consulted with the Sheriff's Department about some issues there, and we're able to move the sign and take care of all the situations there and keep safety as a priority. So with that said, we have a resolution in front of you, if you would like to amend that resolution to handle this situation on Stirrup Road.
Happy to do so. I move to amend Exhibit A of Resolution 04-0520-07, regulating parking on all township streets with exceptions where consideration of public safety requires, by the addition of the following language. No parking shall be permitted on the south side of Stirrup Road along the frontage of 6465 and 6453.
Second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
I will have to abstain since it involves my own neighborhood.
Ms. Rice?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, that's all I have.
Well done.
Thank you.
Okay. Township administrators.
Thank you. The first item we have for the board's consideration this evening is a limited home rule resolution that would authorize me to enter into an agreement with Anderson Community Television. As the board is aware, Anderson Community Television provides coverage of our various governmental meetings, in addition to special segments such as At Your Service and Trustee Talk and other programming for Anderson Township residents. Our current agreement expires at the end of this year. We have been in negotiation with Anderson Community Television and feel that we're very near. There are just some minor tweaks to our existing agreement, things that have changed, services that they now offer, such as YouTube videos, where they are posting the YouTube videos on their website, and we are going to link to it on our website, so that residents who do not have Time Warner Cable, some of the satellite TV providers and the dish providers, our residents are not able to watch Anderson Community Television if they get their service in that manner. So our residents can access these different meetings via YouTube. And we are going to provide links, as I said, on our website, so that individuals who may want to watch this board meeting this evening will be able to do so at their leisure. Those are the kind of tweaks that we hope to finalize in the agreement. And this evening, I am just requesting the board's authorization to sign such an agreement. It would be an extension for 2 years at the same rate that we have been paying Anderson Community Television right now. They actually receive 3.333% of the gross receipts that we receive. Well, the township doesn't receive the gross receipts, but the gross receipts of Time Warner Cable and Cincinnati Bell and any other cable franchise provider in the township.
And that equates to 40% a year? Is that?
Yes, and then...
3.3% per month of the total.
Plus, there was an additional $6,000 per month payment. We're going to roll that into one number as opposed to having the two separate figures. But the intent is that there wouldn't be any increase to the township in the amount that we're providing to Anderson Community Television to provide this service to our residents.
Okay.
I would move that we adopt a limited home rule resolution authorizing the township administrator to enter into an agreement with Anderson Community Television and declaring an emergency as detailed before us.
Second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Rice?
Yes.
Thank you. And I will certainly make sure that the board receives the final copy of that agreement. The next item we have are the events listings for the month. The Anderson Area Chamber of Commerce will have their Anderson Area Pizza Showcase this Sunday in this very room from 1:30 to 4 p.m. Admission is $5 for adults, $2 for children 10 and under. And there will be NFL football showing on the big screen. Not sure people want to watch the Bengals, but we'll have some football up there for people to watch. The other major event of the year is the Chamber conducts an annual Thanksgiving breakfast at Anderson Hills United Methodist Church. That will be held on Wednesday, November the 21st, beginning at 7:30 a.m. Breakfast will be provided, and there is an inspirational speaker.
40 years they've been doing that.
Yes, and it is a very well-attended event. It is something that, you know, personally, I feel it's one of those things that brings the community together and makes us all realize how important community is. I know that we have members, business members, local ministers, a lot of people attend this, and we encourage residents to stop by. Even if they're not a member of the chamber, they can make a reservation and attend.
Yeah.
The township will be working with Anderson Town Center to conduct the annual tree lighting, which will be on Saturday, December 1st from 4 to 6 p.m. up at Anderson Town Center. We expect Santa will be arriving, and there'll be some things for the children, so we encourage families to join us for that event. And the Park District will have Santa's Workshop at Beach Acres Recplex on December 8th. Times will vary between 8:30 and 11:30 a.m. Registration is required. And that can be accessed through Anderson Park District's website.
Okay.
There are 2 items for the board's consideration arising from executive session discussions. The first is a motion before the board for the purchase of property.
I would move that we authorize the township administrator to purchase property for the floodplain and stream bank preservation and future conservation use in an amount not to exceed $20,800, conditioned upon the receipt of Clean Ohio Green Space funds, resulting in a township expense for grant matching funds, environmental, survey, title, research, and other consultant services of less than $7,000. Subject to review by the law director.
Second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Ms. Rice?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Rice?
Yes.
Thank you. The next resolution is, would actually authorize the application of the grant.
I would move that we adopt a resolution authorizing a grant application for Clean Ohio funds to acquire floodplain properties for future conservation uses as detailed before us.
Second?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Rice?
Yes.
Thank you. On behalf of the staff, I would like to wish the board, Mr. Dietz, and our township residents a happy Thanksgiving. That's all we have this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Earhart. Okay, that concludes our agenda for this evening. I want to thank all the folks that were here earlier, and always welcome to your Board of Township Trustees meetings. And to announce that our next televised board meeting will be December 20th, 2012, 6 p.m. as usual. Citizens may call 688-8400 to confirm. And with nothing else on the agenda, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second?
Mr. O'Brien? Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Rice?
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.